Saint Catherine of Alexandria, remembered 25th of November. Saint Catherine is a famous Christian martyr, commemorated every November in the eponymous Catherine Wheel fireworks. She is the patron saint of female students and young women, and is the saint that the popes tried to ban and suppress in the 20th century. To start with the legend of Saint Catherine, we are told that she was a young woman from a noble patrician family in Alexandria in Egypt. Possibly she was the daughter of the Roman governor appointed by Emperor Maximinian. She spent much of her early years in study. One day, aged 14, whilst reading in the public library, she fell asleep. She then dreamed that she saw a young woman holding her young infant son. The woman asked her son if he would like to marry Catherine, and he replied, "No, she's ugly." Catherine, who was generally considered rather beautiful, woke up in tears. This attracted the attention of an elderly Christian priest, also using the library, who came to ask what the matter was. Hearing about her dream, he told the young Catherine that the woman was the Virgin Mary, and her son was Christ. Jesus, he said, would think her soul ugly, as she was a pagan and unbaptized. Catherine started to study the Christian faith, learning quickly and being baptized in time. After this, she had a similar dream. When the woman asked her son if he would like to marry Catherine, he replied, "Yes, she is very beautiful." Catherine awoke to find a new ring on her finger. The intelligent Catherine became a leading apologist for her faith in Alexandria. When the new emperor, Maxentius, launched a fresh persecution of Christians, she was arrested. Some accounts have her directly rebuking Maxentius for his cruelty. Due to her notoriety and her rank, 50 scholars or philosophers were summoned to debate publicly with Catherine, hopefully to convince her and others, and certainly to humiliate this Eastern religious sect that was so popular with the women and slaves of the empire. In debates, Catherine held her own, refuting and confounding arguments against Christianity, leading to at least a few of the philosophers brought in to oppose her converting to her faith themselves. It is generally stated that the emperor made advances towards the beautiful young Catherine, offering her either marriage or the position of mistress. She refused, declaring herself the bride of Christ. She was imprisoned again, with some accounts saying that she managed to convert the wife of the emperor, senior military figures, and 200 others, although accounts do differ. What all legends share is that she was brought out, having been previously beaten and abused, to be broken on the wheel. Wheels have been used in many practices of torture over the centuries. However, being broken on the wheel is a simple and brutal punishment that was used from the ancient world up until its last recorded official use in Prussia in 1841. A large cartwheel is placed flat on a raised area. Sometimes, as it is stated was the case with Catherine's wheel, sharpened pieces of metal are set into it to stab anyone laid over them. The prisoner is then strapped to the flat side of the wheel, sometimes with their arms and legs threaded through the spokes. The executioner then takes a large metal rod and proceeds to break the prisoner's arms and legs. Sometimes it is only after this that the limbs are threaded through the spokes. Before, of course, the executioner moves on to other areas of the body, usually finishing the execution by attacking the head or the region of the heart. The wheel would then be lifted up on a pole to be a visible warning to others. Sometimes the prisoner would not be killed, but would be left alive in this state to die in their own time. The longest known execution took 9 days. Fortunately for Catherine, it is said that her wheel broke the moment she touched it, with several pieces flying off to injure the crowd who had gathered to watch. Denied this method of torture, she was beheaded, with a milk-like substance rather than blood flowing from her neck. Following her death, she was buried. Centuries later, the now Christian emperors built a monastery at Mount Sinai. It is recorded that angels exhumed and transported her remains to the new monastery. However, this is now considered to almost certainly be a mistranslation of monks transporting her body, as their angelic habits and lifestyles led many writers at the time to refer to them as angels. St. Catherine's Monastery at Sinai is now the oldest continuous monastery in the world. However, recent persecutions from the Egyptian government threaten this, as they are attempting to evict the monastic community and to take the building into secular government control, as they argue that after 1,500 years in residence, the continued presence of the religious community might threaten the future of this historic site. This continues a wider pattern of Christian persecution in the region that would have been familiar to Catherine. The legend of St. Catherine made her in time one of the most popular saints in Europe. Joan of Arc claimed that one of the voices she heard was that of Catherine of Alexandria. One of the earliest surviving examples of a miracle play, put on to tell the story of a saint's life and later miracles, was staged by the people of Dunstable in 1110, telling the life of Catherine. Goran, the local man who directed it, borrowed some copes from St. Albans, which were accidentally burnt. As recompense, Goran became a monk in the St. Albans community, maintaining a special devotion to St. Catherine for the rest of his life. Europe and the churches of the East and Africa are littered with dedications, paintings, and stained glass depicting St. Catherine. In Germany, she was regarded as one of the 14 holy helpers. Why then, in 1969, did the popes remove St. Catherine from the Roman calendar and try to suppress her cult? There has always been a degree of uncertainty over the history of St. Catherine. The earliest writings about her come from the 9th century, around 600 years after her supposed death. However, dates around the building of St. Catherine's Monastery and her remains suggest an existing tradition slightly before this date. Some Catholic scholars have argued that there is no more to Catherine's life than the invention of a Greek writer setting out to create an edifying romance. Other commentators suggest that her life may be the result of the life of the pagan Hypatia of Alexandria being rewritten in a Christian mould. A final theory has it that Catherine's place in history may come from the writings of Eusebius, where he records that the Emperor Maximinius summoned a young Christian girl to the palace with the intention of making her his mistress. When she refused, he had her estates confiscated and banished her. Eusebius gives her no name, but later writers call her Dorothea. Some think that Catherine may be her pagan birth name, and that Dorothea, meaning gift of God, may be her baptismal name. Ultimately, St. Catherine proved too popular for the popes to ban, while the Orthodox and Anglican churches continued to celebrate her in unbroken tradition. She was restored to the Roman calendar in the year 2000. St. Catherine has been an example to many of faith and learning coming together. She is represented in art with a palm branch and her spiked wheel. Catherine is patron saint of young girls, students, philosophers, nurses, wheelwrights, spinners, millers, Christian apologists, librarians, mechanics, and the dying. St. Catherine is remembered on the 25th of November.